So once we get a few more people in, we'll get going. I'm Ron Ricks, a program director with CFES Brilliant Pathways, and I'm going to kick off this morning's session with a welcome. You know what would be helpful, everyone? If you could go to the chat box and type in your name, your school, and what community you're from. That way everyone else will know who's there. And then we may use it, we're going to use the chat box for some questions and some communications, share some links with you that'll be in there. So we'll use the chat box feature of this. I'm going to hang on for 1 minute as it still looks like folks are still coming in. Thank you for adding to the chat box. It's our way of virtually introducing ourselves. And hopefully you see on the screen, your program directors are here with you. So again, let's get started. I'm Ron Ricks, the program director with CFES Brilliant Pathways. And I'm just going to quickly introduce us, get us started. And then what we're going to do today is we're going to go through, we're going to really highlight our core practices that most of you are familiar with at CFES Brilliant Pathways. We're going to share a little bit about our new 10-point plan, which is our emphasis for the years and what we want our scholars to receive. We're going to move into creating your plan, the planning and training document. Then we're going to follow up with some of the best practices and components that should be in your plan. We'll talk about the program director's roles and responsibilities, and then resources that CFES Brilliant Pathways has to share with you. And then we'll carry a couple quick upcoming events. So again, welcome everyone. Just want to quickly have our program directors introduce themselves. John, you want to kick off? I know you're working with Atlanta.
Yeah, hey everybody, John Riddell here. I'm director of programs and online content, but in this case, I got some schools here that I'm looking forward to working with more this year after last year was mostly virtual. So I'm looking forward to some planning today.
Good. And we've got 13 schools with us from Georgia to all the way through New York. We've got the Burke from Boston. We got to keep that Boston-New York rivalry because we got a slew of us from the city. Manny, you want to say hello?
Good morning, everyone. Manny Tejeda, program director. Glad to see all of you.
Good. Dennis?
Dennis Fahey, program director for the Leatherstocking region of Central New York, and Friendship.
Yep, and Friendship's with us today. Tara?
Hi, everyone. Tara Smith, Vice President for Programs, also a program director for the team in Schenectady, as well as other schools around the country that we're working with.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Hannah Corcoran, and I'm a new program director here, and I am working with Tara in Schenectady.
Good. So let's get going. The first thing I want to do is, CFES Brilliant Pathways, we're agile, we evolve, we redesign every year, but it's exciting because we stick to our core practices. We stick to our heart and soul. I've been with them for over 20-something years, and we haven't changed who we are. We have the core practices of mentoring, pathways to college and career, and then the essential skills. But this year, our emphasis, our vision is really hopefully reconnecting with our schools, reconnecting with our scholars. Hopefully we get back in person more. And if that is to be able to keep delivering virtual content to you, the virtual training similar to what we're doing now. One of the exciting things that you'll see that we'll share a little bit later is our new 10-point plan, which we've shared with all of our schools and our teams, but it's really narrowing down specifically as to what we feel your scholars and our school programs would benefit from by having kids acquire all those. And the other area is really, as our core this year, is preparing our students, the students in your schools, to be college and career ready. And one of the big initiatives that we're looking to do is to build your capacity in your school, in your community, by really establishing a cadre of CCR advisors so that kids are receiving the same message from multiple sources And we'll share that with you later, how we're expanding that out to reach to your family population. So in a nutshell, that's our mission, that's our vision for the 21-22 school years. And the purpose of today is really help you start building your plan or your roadmap or your pathways for your programs this year. Let's start off and kick off with a review of our essential skills. Hannah, you want to talk about mentoring?
Yes, so there's 3 core practices that will help, will be important to implement in your plan. And mentoring, I find to be the bedrock of CFES and really the foundation. As you develop your mentoring program, obviously you know your students and your need best. And there's lots to think about with how to implement the programming, how to identify who, what, where, how, but also you know your students best. So thinking about, okay, peer-to-peer, I always find to be a great option, but then you also have, you can use your community members, you can use the faculty or staff within your school. And we also provide multiple opportunities virtually through our CCR training, which Ron will talk a lot about in a little bit here, but also within our website, there is a login for mentoring and different skills and activities and resources available to you and your students. We also have a Colgate Cares Day, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but that's also another virtual option for students to connect, and via our college and career pathways is another great opportunity. But with mentoring, I can't express enough just how important it is and how all these core practices intertwine with one another and the profound effect that it has on a mentor and a mentee.
And especially with a lot of our populations, they're the first in their family to attend college or to get a certificate of value, but how do we have different people expose them as to what could be, and mentoring so simply, talk about the Colgate professionals doing it, but the same thing of having upperclassmen mentor younger ones with the transitions.
Well, I think also just providing opportunity. An opportunity is
Right.
what's not just in front of you, and with a mentor and a mentee, you have that. And a mentee can give just as much back to a mentor. And I really believe peer-to-peer is a great option, and one that I have found at the collegiate level to be the most impactful for both parties involved.
Right, yeah, it's a win-win, so that's cool. So mentoring is our first essential skills. John, pathways to college and careers?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah and Ron. I like the way you tie them in, because it really is, a mentor can have an impact on a student that could get them interested in college. And then we teach them the essential skills to be successful once they get there. So it really is a nice continuum. As a lot of you know, last year was a really difficult year. We had a 30% drop in students nationwide from underserved areas, choosing to attend the college pathway. So this year we're really focused on working with those students that may not have took a year off, but also this year's class. And when we talk about college and career readiness, it's 2-year, it's 4-year. And it's also any credential of value. So I think of my own kids, I have 4 kids. I had one follow a culinary path, another cosmetology, one went to a 2-year, one went to a 4. And I had kind of pushed the college narrative all along, which is significant for us. But then once I realized what their true love was and kind of help them along that pathway, I think it's synonymous with what we do at CFES. We really try and get kids exposed to potential careers, get them excited about those careers. And once they're kind of into it, help them along that pathway to college and career. I'm just thinking about the different schools that are logged on here. I mean, Atlanta alone, just in the area, there's the 30 plus colleges, 2-year, 4-year, there's so many options. And last year we really pivoted to a virtual model for obvious reasons, and that's enhanced everything we do. I mean, we're able to take students on, who may have just looked in their own area to go to college, which can be limited if you're in a rural area, of course, right? Now we're taking them, exposing the virtual tours to colleges across the country with young alums. We try to pair up young alums to kind of guide the tour, which is sometimes, just a little bit static and not, we kind of add a little life to it with somebody who actually went to the school. So we're continuing to expand the options, and we'll push them out, and would love to have as many students as possible engage in those.
John, it's as simple as, getting college and career ready, but, we got to get the kids to high school graduation. They don't go immediately to college, but those are the things so that if they don't directly go to college or vocational, they're ready whenever they do choose to go. So it's as simple as getting them to graduation. That opens up so many doors, and then having them ready for whatever the future brings. So to do that, we need a lot of essential skills. Manny, you want to give us a little highlight?
Absolutely. And I think this connects it really well. I think especially for our younger students, the abstract that it presents to be thinking about college, how do we break it apart so that they can think about those possibilities? I think the gameplay and the ability to develop, define, and then draw conclusions as to how this relates to their life, it's really awesome. I mean, we don't go around and talk about how do you develop the networking skills. We do activities, we do games related to networking that helps them kind of draw the connections, and they come up with those connections themselves. The moment they do that, they feel more that they have a lot more saying into their own path, and that's really what we want to do. A lot of us love the essential skills because really is an opportunity to put it in many different forms and adapt it as we see fit. And it's one of those fun things that, especially our middle schoolers, they love so much. But even at the high school level, and many of you are at the high school level here, when you talk about goal setting, right? I mean, thinking about college, never mind graduating high school, that's a lofty goal. They're not thinking about that. But if you break it down into smaller steps on how you're going to make it through ninth grade, how are you going to transition, that tends to become a lot more appealing to them. And they're thinking about these essential skills because we know they're important. Our corporate partners are telling us they're important. Our colleges are telling us they're important because most of the jobs today, we know they're probably not going to be there, for the exception of very highly technical jobs. But the things that will be there are the skills that they need to develop, and what a better way to do it when they're in school.
Manny, I love how you describe those, with the acquiring of them, the developing of them. And I think the biggest things with these skills is they're also transferable to so many aspects of someone's life. So great, thank you. I think it's time now to start thinking about creating your plan to embed all those essential skills, mentoring, and pathways into your school culture.
Let's get to it.
Good.
So, what we've been talking about is the fact that CFES Brilliant Pathways provides this framework. We have the resources, we have the support, the network, the training, that all sort of works together to help students become college and career ready. So, as you all know, you're all pretty familiar with CFES, you're all returning schools. We work directly with our school teams to develop individualized programming, and that's where this planning tool comes into play. And really, it's just, as Ron mentioned earlier, this roadmap that we all use collectively to make sure we're all working in it together throughout the school year to really support the goals that you have for students in your school communities around college and career readiness. So as a little exercise to get you ready for the planning process and talking about how to create and build and strengthen CFES programs, we're going to have you do just a quick activity. So if you have a piece of scrap paper in front of you and can replicate this line drawing, and then complete the drawing however you see fit. We're going to give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll ask a couple of you to share. So the task here again is to just replicate this line on a scrap piece of paper and create some sort of visual, finish the drawing. So we'll give you just another minute to finish up your artistic creations.
We may prove the value of graphic arts compared to some of these hand sketched. Great career in the future. Oh.
All right, so what I'm gonna ask you to do is if you can share, either you can hold your drawing up to your camera. That might help us. I'll try to pin you so you can be up front and everyone can see. If you do not have the ability to show your camera, you can maybe just unmute yourself and tell us what you did create. That would be helpful as we kind of move through this conversation. So would anyone like to share what they came up with? Hannah, you want to start?
So I'll start. I actually made it into a little, I don't know if you guys can see that, into a little lake with 2 boats and some trees.
Nice.
So you watered down the assignment. Yeah.
Dennis, do you have anything you want to share? No? Ron, how about you?
I'd rather not.
All right. I started off, I was just gonna make it a worm, but I figured I had to go a little further. So what I did is I turned it sideways and created a swimming pool. And keeping with that water thing.
Great. Anyone else like to share? You don't have any artists in the group?
I'm one of the Dave Prestons, I guess. I got a dinosaur going up the hill.
Oh,
wow.
wow. Thank you.
That was cool. Mine's not so cool, and I'm not going to show the drawing, but I made it into an ear, or at least attempted to just reflect on making sure that we're listening to the people that we're going to create this plan for.
Great.
Love it. Thanks, David.
Anyone else want to share? You don't have to share the drawing, but maybe just the concept you came up with.
I thought it looked like a heart, so I kind of just made it symmetrical into a heart on the other side.
Perfect.
I love it.
Great. So although we appreciate your artistic talents, the point of this activity is really just to kind of reiterate that, and as you could see in here, that each person really has a different interpretation and ultimately outcome from the original line that was shared. And for me, that just, as we're moving into this planning process and really thinking about how to make sure that your CFES programs and plans are authentic and tailored to fit your individual school needs. It's important to recognize that all of the, each of these ideas are unique and translate into something much bigger. And so I want you to just kind of keep that in mind as we move into planning, because although CFES provides this framework and the resources, the practices, we're guiding you, but how you interpret these practices and these opportunities and present them to your students is really open for interpretation. So I just wanted to use this as a reminder to remain flexible as we think about our plans, consider all of the different opportunities and angles to provide CCR readiness resources to students, and to really explore all options. The planning process, which Hannah will talk a little bit more about in a minute, is really just a chance to get all of your ideas in one place so that we can keep going back and revisit and adjust. And so it can be used as sort of this place where you're housing the ideas that are coming to you as quickly as they are. And what you put on that plan, it can be changed. And that's, we like to say it's an organic document. We really want it to just be this roadmap that we can use to figure out how to best support you and make sure that there's alignment what you're thinking and what we are providing. So,
AJ, if I
yes.
may, it
Sure.
just don't get it too complex and don't take on too much that you can't handle. I think if you keep it as simple as possible and then expand where you feel comfortable about it, everybody will be better off in your school.
Absolutely. I think that's especially important going into, or settling into a new school year after, last year's challenges, and there's still that residual uncertainty happening, and we realize that. So I think, Dennis, you're spot on in terms of, do take little steps. I mean, you can have a lot of ideas and put them all in this plan, but if you don't get to them, it's okay, kind of go through in a more systematic way and figure out, okay, what is realistic for you, for your team, for your students to implement, right now, and what is more likely to be revisited a couple months from now or by the end of the year. And that makes it a little bit more manageable. One of the things that Ron mentioned early on in the opening was this tool that we've created, and we're calling it a 10-point plan. It's basically there are 10 objectives that we've outlined originally internally to make sure that our CFES team and program directors were really comfortable and clear about the expectation and how we can best support our schools in helping create a college and career readiness culture. So you were emailed this document, I believe, leading into this session. We'll send it again afterwards, but basically it's a document that we created that outlines the 10 ways that we intend to engage students in mentoring, in pathways to college and career, and of course, involve them and expose them to the essential skills that Manny talked about. There isn't anything on this list that it would be shocking or new to our school teams, but it's just really, we've sharpened our focus and really got, kind of took a deep dive in looking at what are we really hoping to accomplish in our mission, in our vision moving forward. So it's everything from helping students understand the financial aspects of career college readiness. It's making sure that students are engaging in the core practices in multiple ways. It's helping them understand jobs of the future and how to connect their interests to jobs in different career fields. It's making sure that they have that exposure to college campuses, both virtually and in person, if possible. And one other that I think is really important is this idea of being able to share information with their peers. So we know that you'll be identifying a cohort of CFES scholars. And some of you have actually taken CFES school-wide, but I think it's really important if we really our plan is to incorporate these practices and these conversations with as many students as possible who could really benefit from it. We want to, the more we're exposing a cohort of students to opportunities or people, experiences, we want them to have a platform to share it with others who might not have been experiencing it in the same way. So that peer-to-peer connection is really important, whether it's formalized in terms of a mentoring piece or just, opportunities for students to share the information that they are gathering around college and career is really important. So Hannah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the planning document in progress?
Happily. So you will, if you have not already, you will receive access to a Google Doc where your planning document will live. And it is, like everyone has said, it's going to be an organic process that will evolve as it should. And I think what Dennis said is spot on, keeping it simple and thinking about what do you already have in place that might just need a little beefing up, or is it something that you want to add more to or completely change, whether you have a mentor program already implemented. But it's going to allow us and you to recognize, are our 3 core practices being met, and are we hitting all the 10-point plan? And it's just, I think it's a really, really helpful tool, and that's what it is. It's a tool. It doesn't need to be anything that you need to stress too much about, but again, it's going to be something that will evolve over time. We are going to ask that they are completed by October 11th. And that way your PD and you can continue to work together to implement what it is that you want, what your goals are for you and your students, so that we can make sure we're all achieving what is important. And again, I think Tara also said, be flexible, and this is something that will allow us to also continue to support you through as well.
And just a little bit about the assessment piece. So if this is, I think assessment can sometimes be a scary a turnoff. Really, we try to keep the paperwork minimal for our school teams. So what we ask you to do is develop this plan in the fall that, again, is just sort of guides us through the school year. But then twice over the course of the school year, both in January and then in June, we ask that you just, and with the support of a program director, other CFES folks, is to kind of look at where you are in that planning process and share some updates, some highlights, and then towards the end of the year, send more specific quantitative information specifically around student engagement in the core practices and other indicators that help us in reporting to our funders, so that we can demonstrate what sort of impact took place over the course of the school year. Those assessments, again, I think everyone here is familiar with. You've gone through that process before. We're updating the 2 documents right now, and we'll have those shared in those shared school folders shortly. We just want to make sure they align with everything else that we've been talking about, specifically the 10-point scholar plan. So we'll share those updated documents with you. But again, it's really just a chance for you to identify, some of the highlights and challenges mid-year, so we can make adjustments and address the places that you need more support. And then, of course, at the end of the year, collect some more information that helps us in moving forward and being able to report accurately to the people that need to hear how things are going.
So thinking about that, have you at all thought, as you think about kind of what is working for you, have any of you, since you all have that experience, what has worked for your school or your students that maybe you'd like to share, or something that maybe you'd like more improvement on? One of our colleagues yesterday during our meeting, Chris Mazzella, he made a really good point about how to incorporate faculty into your programming, and what are some little pieces that each person can bring without adding too much or making it feel overwhelming, or it's another thing they have to do. But how can you best involve others, particularly through the mentoring program, or other opportunities that they might be able to provide based on their background?
I don't know if David, if you're or someone else from the Schenectady team want to share a little bit about what you're putting together in terms of CFES inspired advisories. That I think is a really great idea that others could benefit from hearing about. Earl or David, would you like to share about your advisories?
I'm probably gonna have to defer to Dave on that one. He may have been called out of the office because school's going on. It's just getting started, so it's kind of early to tell yet, I think. We're still going through some contractual things to kind of put it in place. Would probably be the best. So we may want to revisit that next time.
Chair, I could chime in. Yesterday, some of the schools were talking about the partnerships that we have. So one good example is that, Beekmantown, Crown Point, and a number of schools in the New York area are we partner with ECHO. So for half the day, they're going to go out and do some research on a vessel. So they're very STEM focused, while the other half of the group is going to go visit a college campus, and then they switch. So a number of schools have said they really value the partnerships that we've already set up, because it makes their job easier. We can bring them in and hit multiple points, STEM and college visits.
Thanks, John.
You know, and Tara, it was interesting, some of our new schools, working in North Country, is they have a lot of things in place in isolation, and they're looking to use this as an umbrella to connect the dots. So not that they're, like what Dennis says, they're not adding a lot more, they're just putting a little bit more meaning to what they're already doing. They're connecting it, so through the course of their year, their kids are experiencing the same message from multiple sources. So that seems to make a lot of sense, especially in today's world.
A group I was working with yesterday was also talking about, and these were a lot of brand new CFBS schools. So we were really talking more about the foundation of CFBS and developing school-based teams and selecting the scholar cohorts. But something that came up, and it continues to come up in conversations, is making sure that the practices are kind of intertwined and not thinking of them as separate events or activities, but looking at, this 3-in-1 concept where you can have, maybe it's a college campus visit with between mentors and mentees, and they do an essential skill workshop while there. That's hitting all 3 practices in one experience. And the more that you can develop a plan that overlaps these practices in that way, I think the more impact you'll see, and the less teams are feeling like they're shouldering like these multiple little engagements. So that was one highlight that I'm happy to share from yesterday. Do any of our school teams have ideas for what they are planning or have already, will continue to pull into the plan for this year? Okay. All right, well, why don't we move forward and talk a little bit about the kind of what you can expect from us in addition to delivering the practices and through that 10-point plan. A little bit about, program directors and the support that you can plan to receive both virtually and in person. This is just a visual reminder of what I actually just said about just making sure that there's a strong school-based team that can help implement the program kind of on a regular basis. This can be 3 people, it could be 10 people, depending on your capacity. And what we've been saying too is that, if it's, maybe you have a team of 10 people and they're involved at varying levels, that's okay. Maybe one of those people is like solely in charge of making sure that the mentoring practice is up and running. Another person might be designated to handle all, college visits virtually and in person. So you can delegate in that way. We love to have different team members participating in different opportunities that we're providing, both through professional development and scholar engagement. But really, you'll want to make sure that you have people at the school that can help carry the program and the practices on a regular basis. Then, of course, it's important to have those students identified, the CFBS scholars. We ask our schools to identify at least 100 students, knowing that that's a manageable number to engage and keep track of. Many of you I know have taken CFBS school-wide. You've become schools of distinction for those reasons. And some schools, you might have targeted certain groups of students and now need to readjust for whatever reason. And that's okay too. We can continue to kind of explore the cohort and figure out, really, it all depends on which students will benefit the most from a little extra attention in terms of programming and service. You all have an assigned program director, but we also have a really incredible team here at CFBS Brilliant Pathways that will continue to communicate with you throughout the year, provide opportunities of virtual opportunities that John will talk a little bit more about, has become really a huge focus of ours, given that so many of our schools are in this hybrid mode. And so we really encourage you to take advantage of what we're offering. And if you can't do it live, then we are archiving and housing all of our resources in a place on our new website, which Manny will walk us through momentarily. And then the last piece is just, and kind of going back to what Dennis was saying earlier, we have these 3 core practices. It's really quite simple. And if we're engaging students in these 3 practices, the natural happening is that they will become college and career ready. So, we want to make sure that these practices kind of stay in focus and that we don't waver, and that these practices are what's integrated into your school community to support that college and career readiness mission. So I will turn it over to Manny, who's going to share a little bit about the resources that we have. John will share a bit about our events, virtual, and then some other resources Ron and I will share about. But this is really, we're talking about the core practices and implementation and the 10-point plan. And the question is, how do we do all of this? And we have a really, we have rich resource to support that. So Manny, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tara, and I apologize for bumping you out, but I needed to share my screen. So for those of you who have been with us in the past, you'll see that this webpage looks a little different. So that is intentional. We just went through a major upgrade of our resources, and our website was one of them. Part of the issue was that we had added close to 100 new virtual opportunities and resources, and really needed a place to succinctly point out to where we have our resources, especially for you all, our members. So you'll see some of the kind of the menus up here, our programs, success stories, and so on. I think where you'll spend a lot more time is kind of on the member side. So keep in mind that a lot of this stuff, and if you don't have a login, we'll get you that. Just let us know, shoot us an email. So this is where you really will be doing most of your transactions. So think about this as your hub. So you come in and you want to learn about the different resources related to the essential skills that you can do with the scholars. Well, you can just jump on here and say, well, this week I want to focus on leadership. So you just click on leadership, and then we just list out a little bit more about, obviously, the background of what is leadership, why be a leader, and then the activities based on whether you're in a group, whether you're in 2, and so on and so on. As you click on each of these, we have, and if you've been with us, you know this already, kind of the instructions of how to facilitate a conversation in an activity related to leadership. So it's really comprehensive, and you really have all that you need in order to do the events. Now, one of the things I will say, as you have been familiar in the last 18 months, that some of our activities are more entwined with conducting it virtually. So we do adapt them, and you will see that some of them say specifically for virtual, some of them will be in groups. So you have to be a little creative and use agility as a way in which you can facilitate those. The other things that you'll see on this side are related to the 3 essential skills. I'm not going to go through all of these for the sake of time, but you can see on the pathways to college and career, you'll find the Berlin Career Labs, which will bring you here, which is an interest assessment that we develop, and it's open to all of our schools. So students can, I'm not going to click on it because I've already done it, but they can go in here and kind of explore careers. I'm going to lead into school form just because John will talk about virtual opportunities. The other thing you can find similarly to your Google Drive is any documents that we put in your drive, they'll be listed here. So as Tara mentioned, mid-year assessments and other documents will be uploaded shortly after. But if you don't happen to have access to your Google Drive and you want to just the generic form, you can come in under school forms and just click on it and boom, there you have it. Same way with the conference. If you want to just quickly find the shortcut of how to register for the conference or attend, this is how you would go about it. But we do have that stuff, and I'll let Ron how you get there, and I can show you. So that is really it in terms of what we've done with all the great content that we developed last year, and many of you kind of provided some feedback about some topics that you wanted to see. This is where they all live under live stream. So if you go under member side and then live stream, this is where all the archive of all the events that we've done, the videos will be inside. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to you all.
Thanks, Manny. Nice overview.
John, would you talk a little bit about the virtual opportunities, both upcoming and where to find the opportunities that already took place that can be viewed at their leisure?
Yeah, that's a good segue. Thanks, Manny. There's a lot, there's so much there, but the whole goal of the new website was to just get it in categories. It's pretty good in terms of being able to find them. One of which is our virtual opportunities. So last year, obviously, we made a big pivot and we're able to present a lot of virtual content, which we hadn't done as much of in the past. So it expanded our horizons greatly. And the way that we kind of think of it is categorically. So if you're saying, okay, I'd like some financial literacy, an expert on that. We've got multiple videos on experts on financial literacy, college and career, STEM, all the essential skills. So that's expansive. It could be leadership. We've had the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, George Pataki, members of Congress. It's a really amazing opportunity. I mean, you can have an 8th grade student ask a sitting member of Congress a question in class about government. And they are recorded, so you can make it part of your curriculum. If you can't watch the live part of it, you can watch it later and embed it in your curriculum. I would say there's a number of categories that we've really focused on lately. So diversity, equity, and inclusion has been something that a lot of you have requested more information on and exposure to. So that's a new category for us. As topics emerge, we like to add guests, and it's basically based on what you all have said we really need, whether it be financial literacy or what it is. But where Manny showed, there's a menu of the live upcoming ones, but then you can go to all of the archived ones, which was, I believe, 82 last year. So again, it's a lot, but it's a menu, and you can choose, what you need. And to Ron's point earlier about identifying a teacher to have on your team. So if it's related to government, you have a social studies teacher. If it's STEM, you can go to any of your science teachers. So it really can help support their curriculum.
And John, I know that some of the schools that I'm working with, they're using these as substitute lesson plans too. It's just because of the changing of the things. It's a great way to get content level material in that's college and career pathways in time that's many times as an administrator, I was always struggling to fill. So we've created some nice substitute and content lesson plans out of this.
Yeah, we've had principals say subs have used it, and it's fantastic for the filler. Yeah.
How about branding and social media, John? Can you move us through that conversation?
Yeah, that's it. For us, we really like to show, I think that what is the work? We talk about what we do, but to actually see the work in action. So for you to send us photographs, anything that you're doing, related to CFES, of course, and any of the core practices, we love to highlight it on social media. So we'll send you a link and an email address that you can send photos to, that we'll highlight and push out on social media, tag your school, kind of creates a nice synergy between, and other schools. It also shows the good work that other schools are doing, so schools can get ideas from other schools. And branding, we'll send a little something out. We have a few things that we like to keep consistent, but generally we really like just, you showing us what's going on at your school through writing and visuals.
Thank you. It looks like Manny's putting up on the screen our style guide, branding guide. But as John mentioned, if you share information with us, we can package it up nicely and push it out to all of our social media spaces as well as our website if appropriate. So
Yeah, that's a good point there. Don't get too hung up or paranoid and like, oh, I got look at all these guidelines. We can you send us what you can and we'll get it into the style.
John and maybe Ron, you can tag team the next item on our agenda, which is the global conference coming up, as well as the CCR advisor trainings that take place virtually every month.
Yeah, Ron I'll let you talk a little bit about some of the guests, but I mean, we have some amazing guests, two vice presidents from Netflix that can really, were true examples of a company that pivoted, showing some essential skills coming from sort of near extinction to becoming, the most popular streaming platform in the world. But I also think it's the name of the conference, Leading the Way, the New College and Career Readiness Paradigm. I think for participants, the really amazing thing is, the speakers are truly phenomenal, but it's also the sharing of best practices. Schools from, all of our schools from across the country get to talk with individuals from other schools, and it just becomes this, it really is the single event of the year where excitement is created, ideas are shared, and people go back to their schools and just are really invigorated.
And this year, John, it's something we never done. It's a hybrid model. We've worked with the Sagamore Resort, and we can have 200 guests on site. We'll be spread out within the ballrooms and the meeting rooms. So for your school teams, we have a designated rooms for you, and registrations all included, so you can send the folks in person. You're also, if you're a local district, and you can commute back and forth for the day, that's another option we have. But it's also unlimited with the virtual enrollments that you can have at the national conference. We've got scholar sessions for grades 6 through 12 that happen every day, Monday and Tuesday. It's October 25th and 26th. But it's real exciting with the hands-on session, the interactiveness, and some of the great keynote speakers, like you mentioned. You saw Ray McNulty there, who's just a leader in education, talking about where education's going in the future. The vice presidents from Netflix on how they've pivoted. We've got Southwest Airlines, their director of talent acquisition, talking about how they embed the essential skills in the Southwest workforce. We've got all kinds of STEM activities with West Point cadets up with their robotics program. So it's so much hands-on. So we encourage you to register as many as you can, especially virtually, because what happens is people that register now have access to that content for up to a year. So everything is archived. They can go back in. You may just want to register your superintendent if they just want to get into listen to one of the 2 keynote speakers or have access to it, but it's a great way to get some common language and common visioning with your whole school staff and your school team. Now, we have for the past 24 months have been doing monthly college and career readiness advisor trainings. Many of your schools have had folks go through that. As we mentioned, one of our goals this year and our vision is to increase your capacity by having more trained CCR advisors working with the students in your school. It's kind of neat is one of the schools I work with here up in the Adirondacks, there's a 6th grade teacher who has gone through the training. He's embedded in 6th grade class as college and career readiness. He also happens to be an assistant football coach on the high school team. So now he's doing college mentoring with his players. So it's multifaceted within the school. We'll be doing that every month. The next one starts tomorrow, September 23rd. We still have space available if someone wants to register. This is our generic training. In addition to that, we are customized trainings where we have CCR training for your parents and family members, where it's a little different focus. They're all virtual, so they'll join in and go through a live interactive and a live closing session, and then they'll go through 3 or 4 on-demand sessions that they can watch on their own. But for the parents, we get more into the FAFSA. more into hands-on and information and skills they need. We look at the idea of how to select colleges based upon financial aid, understanding financial aid, all starting with the FAFSA. And we're also, and then another one that we're doing with our corporate partners is we're training corporate members. So these are where we'll have a cadre of volunteer mentors from corporations. We've got the Colgate-Palmolive, we have the SAIC, KMPG, Bain, a variety of those have gone through. That now is a tool that your program directors can work with you. But you may have community partners, community business, could be a local bank, could be a local chamber of commerce. You want to get them trained. Again, it's all free to you. The exciting new one for us is an advanced level College of Career Readiness Advisor 2.0. That's going to be held in conjunction with the national conference. So while we'll have the live opening and virtual closing sessions, the content of the national conference will take place of their sessions in there, really getting into the new paradigm of paying for college, new understanding of what career readiness is, listen to some college folks talking about the changes in that. If you've been through the CCR, here's a great way to pick up additional professional development points. All of our trainings provide professional certification from the University of Vermont and CFES Brilliant Pathways. The 2.0 will be an additional 5 hours of certified professional training. So the biggest thing with all this is I think we've heard you, we were like you last year, everything went quickly into the virtual world. Our schools closed, everything went remote. So we were scrambling a little bit. I know we were short sometimes of getting information out to you. So with all these virtual opportunities, you're going to get a monthly update of newsletters of everything with direct links in it. And then we'll follow up with weekly reminders. So you'll know 3 or 4 weeks in advance that something's coming up. And if you're like me, you look out, go, and then I'll forget about it. And then I get the weekly reminder, oh boy, I better register now. But again, we're trying to give you more advance notice with that. So we're pretty well excited about the virtual opportunities, both for the CCR, the hybrid conference, and also all the virtual content that John's and Manny have been working on.
Yeah, and all just a big thanks to John, Manny, and Ron for lining all of these opportunities up for us and communicating that to schools. So we're really excited about what we have planned. Just the last point in this section of our agenda before Manny wraps things up for us and we end right on time is the School of Distinction process. So again, many of those of you on this call are familiar with this process, but this is an opportunity for schools to become CFES Schools of Distinction. It's a year-long process that really requires just a intent to become a school of distinction. On the planning tool, you'll have an opportunity to check a box or sign your name and say that, yes, our school team would like to become a school of distinction for this school year. And that is just an indicator for us to make sure that as program directors, we can keep that on our radar and weave it into conversations that we're having with you on a regular basis. But really, it all starts out with an application, and the application is more of a self-assessment. It's looking at your school CFES programs and rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 4 using a rubric that we've created, and then trying to advance that rating between between now and the end of the year. The most, I guess, time-consuming part of this process is just documenting the work that you're doing. And because I know the day goes by really quickly, and once you finish one thing, you're on to the next. It's not usually, right front and center to take photographs or collect, student quotes or compile anything, in this way. But that is a piece of the process. We ask for schools to submit a portfolio and a final report at the very end of the year. And of course, our team is available to support all of you in that process throughout the school year. But we'll be circulating the application. We'll be sharing it in those shared Google School folders. and following up with everyone to see if it's something that you're interested in doing and figuring out how we can help you do it. Because we really encourage any school that would like to be a school distinction, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. Manny, next steps?
So I like next steps and kickoff instead of wrap up because we're kicking off the year, right? So we know we're putting a lot out there for you. It's meant to be complementary to what you're doing, and you heard it from each of us. We don't want to be overwhelming, but we understand that a lot of what we're providing could be overwhelming in a silo, right? So when you're building out your plan, as Dennis mentioned, keep it simple. Use the resources available to you, the program directors, the staff, to make sure that you can come up with a plan that makes sense for your scholars, right? So when we talk about, you know, the events that are going to be coming up, you talking to your teachers, talking to others involved and as part of your CFES core team, and think about how can we utilize the resources available to us, not how can we fit it in addition to what we're doing. That's really going to be the most helpful for you. So for those of you who don't have access to the website or want us to create that, I'm dropping in the chat the email address where you are going to be sending us a note to get you access. As Hannah mentioned, a lot of these forms are already in your Google folder. Again, use that email address if you can't, for whatever reason, find it. So with that, I'm ready to kick it off. Are we good?
Great.
All right, couple thumbs ups.
So what our team will stick around just for a couple minutes if anyone has specific questions. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today. And we, as Manny said, look forward to working with you and kicking things off and following up.
Wade, we'll be in touch.